Hi everyone, and welcome back to Bobble Pod. I'm Manpreet Singh, CEO of Bobble Digital. Before we kick off, I hope you can like, subscribe, and follow us on our social platforms, on our podcast platforms, on our YouTube. Don't forget to click on the bell button to get notifications from when these vodcasts and podcasts come out. Hopefully you've liked the last two episodes since we relaunched season 3. I personally liked the last episode a lot because I did a little bit of ranting on Google, but this episode is not really talking about, well, it is talking about Google, but focusing more on SEO and what does the future of SEO look like. So last episode, future of PPC and an overview of Google. This episode, the future of SEO, and we'll be going into a little bit more information on what that means for you as businesses, individuals, and how you can get involved and what things you should really be looking out for. So with further ado, I'm going to get straight into it. And guys, as always, just jump in with any questions you have. So in the last episode, I talked about how as a marketplace, you know, in terms of market share, Google has a 92% market share. Now we know that. We know more than 9 in 10 people use Google as a platform, but they're not just using that for Google ads. They are using that to do general searches. So that, you know, when you look at the volume of searches per day, it's 5.6 billion searches per day. That is a lot of searches. That's roughly 2 trillion searches a year. 2 trillion. You can't even fathom. It's 12 digits to a trillion, isn't it? If my maths is correct. Imagine that. I mean, it's just unfathomable the amount of numbers and searches that are happening. And here's what's happening within SEO. There's a lot of updates coming from Google. And we're going to reference iRobot because, as you can probably tell if you're watching the podcast or you're listening, we record this in one go. 4 episodes. It's just ease of time. You know, it's not like the Graham Norton show where we say it's Friday when they actually record on a Thursday. You know, we're quite transparent. You know, maybe next time I'll bring in a hoodie and we'll change hoodie and we'll do a bit more branding. But generally, it's a lot's happening. Since 2010, there's been a lot of updates. And just to give you some stats here, in 2010, Google made 516 algorithm changes. That number increased to 1,653 in 2016. And in 2018, it was 3,234. I don't have the data for the last couple of years, but I can guarantee it's going to be over 5,000 updates. So that's on average about at least 9 algorithm changes a day. So it's safe to say that it's no longer easy to manipulate Google. Now, I already talked about my issues with Google, but Google is a great platform. There's a lot that you can get out of Google in particular. And one challenge I'm going to set right now is we have an individual website called www.bobblepod.co.uk. And part of our strategy with season 3 is so when people are searching for marketing podcasts and certain search terms, we actually have a strategy already in place to get that ranking higher. So right now, I don't think we're on page 1. So what I'll do is I'll revisit that ranking in a few months' time and tell you how well we're doing from an SEO strategy to show you how you can actually grow with Google on SEO. And it's when I talk about, you know, Google's a mountain, can't be moved, but it can be climbed. SEO is the longer route, but the more rewarding one. And I guarantee you, if we actually optimize more SEO keywords for, you know, marketing podcasts and different topics of marketing podcasts, like the future of SEO in 2022 and beyond, or in a digital age, we'll get more people listening to our podcast and viewing our video content, which is the future of the type of content you as consumers are consuming, which is why I'm here right now with Callum and Josh recording this content instead of doing a blog or an article, is because you're more likely to listen to a podcast for 10, 15 minutes. We try to keep it around about 15, 20 minutes. If it goes over, it's because we've got into a really good conversation overall. So 2 trillion searches a year, that's a lot of searches, a lot of content being created on the online web. But what does that actually mean? So SEO is changing and very, very, very quickly. So it's all about what I call providing answers. When we consider a user's intent online and how that is changing, we're trying to learn that on-site, we're trying to learn what is basically on-site, you know, conversion behavior. How has that changed? Because it's the information you as a business provide. If you're an individual and you've got your individual page, if you're a business and you've got product pages, if you're a service-based B2B business and you've got business pages, it's all about the information you provide. In the last talk, I talked about how Google changed in terms of what people were searching for. And I gave the example of Olay and how basically people typed in dark circles under eyes. Olay used to come out with their product information. Now they talk about what are the causes for dark circles under eyes in a text ad. And that is the same when it comes to SEO. So if you're a bed company, you need to consider, what you're doing is in terms of content. So if someone's on the market and are looking for the best mattress to sleep on, the content you need to provide on your website needs to be like, what are the factors you need to consider for better sleep? What are the products within a mattress that support better sleep, memory foam, etc., like that? These are the answers you need to be providing to your customer. Because if your customer is buying something, they have a question in mind or they have a reason for buying that because they have a problem to solve. And your content needs to solve that problem by providing answers. But it's not just content, it's better quality of that content. So it becomes challenging for businesses, especially if you've got tens of thousands of products. If you've got tens of thousands of products, how do you make each individual product page individual? The time and resource needed to do something like that is going to take time and length. But if you're a business with tens of thousands of products that you're selling, you'll be doing millions of pounds of revenue. So you should be investing highly into SEO, into your business to optimize that content and have the best response overall. The other thing to consider is that a recent update has led to businesses losing page indexing. We've seen a number of clients where that has been an issue with. I talked about this as one of the topics at the marketing showcase that we did in Manchester, talking about, the future of Google and digital age. And a few people put their hands up in terms of like, yeah, they've seen the same issue with a lot of de-index and don't know why. And the reason for that is because it comes back to the bespoke, unique content you need to be providing from an SEO perspective on your platform. So what I've got here is that, if you're a business and they've got thousands of pages of products, you can't just have a standard product page anymore. Each content on the page needs to be unique now. And that's a very challenging task to do, as I just said, especially when you've got tens of thousands of products and your resources limited. So you need to be looking at ways where you can add in simple like elements or links to content or headlines to content that provide answers to queries that people have based on a product or service you're looking for. And that's easier when I go back to the bed company example, if all you do is offer beds. But if you're a furniture company that does beds, dining tables, chairs, everything, wall clocks, mirrors, how do you optimize all that for SEO and keywords, and where do you focus on? And I always say focus on where your best revenue and return investment comes from. Focus on your cash cows first. Don't neglect your cash cows as a business. If you are an e-commerce and you're thinking, well, how do I index all these pages? How do we do that? The other thing is we have a client, Pamanda, that is like company's house. So basically you have millions of pages. When I mean millions, I mean millions of pages about companies, information on companies. You can get credit reports. You can get company reports. Gives information about that company's credit history, how safe they are to buy into, their financial health score, who the directors are, a lot of information, but all that is automated. All that is templated and comes in. So when they do an update to the template, it does an update to the template for every single page, millions, because they can't make those pages unique in any way unless they pull in data from different sources, which is challenging. And again, we saw the issue with them where we had got their indexing close to 2 million pages and then it started dropping off and went back down to under 1.5. And it was nothing that we were doing bad, not that we were a bad SEO company. It was just we're at this, the mercy of Google, which brings me to the next topic is Google's algorithm and its automation and learning. When I looked at the stats and discussed the stats earlier, 9 algorithm changes a day on average. You can't manipulate Google anymore. You have to really understand what's going on. What are the crux of this algorithm? The biggest one being that came out last year was Core Web Vitals. Core Web Vitals looked at 3 key things. It launched in July 2021. And in July 2021, Core Web Vitals looked at 3 key things. The largest contentful paint, which is basically the largest element on a page, and how fast this loads. You basically got to get that under 2.5 seconds or below. You then got what we call FIP, first input delay. This measures the time from when a user first interacts with a page when the browser is able to respond. And again, the pass metric score for that is under 100 milliseconds. We're talking F1 times here in terms of, cars, doing fastest laps and qualifying. And then the final element is cumulative layout shift, which measures the sum of different layout shifts across, and the scores of that across different pages. And the passing score has to be, again, 0.1 or below, so 100 milliseconds. So your website we're not a web agency, but we do a lot of technical SEO. Your website needs to be technically sound. It needs to be mobile first, and it needs to be fast. And you need to go to platforms and type into Google page speed, and you'll go to page index URL, and you need to put in your homepage, see what your score is for your homepage, then do it for every other key important page on your website. If you're a service-based customer or you're a product-based customer, you'll get an idea of how well your website is performing, not just on a mobile perspective, but also desktop, but mobile being the emphasis. And it will start telling you what's causing that delay and why you're not passing Core Web Vitals. Again, these tools are free. A lot of this information, that's the whole point of this podcast, to talk about what things mean, how you can use certain tools, how you can benefit from it and get the maximum results on it. And a lot of these things you can do yourselves. You can go onto your laptop, you can type in page speed index, Google page speed index, put in that URL and get the results you want. But the last thing I wanted to talk about was Google automation and AI learning. It's advancing into a point where it's making its own automated changes. So in terms of how your organic search results actually feature. So it was actually changing the meta description automatically, and Google was based on what it thought that page you as a company did. They've kind of rolled that back a little, and you can still go in and make manual changes to it. But it kind of shows how far the AI and the algorithms kind of working within Google in terms of how it's advancing, how it's growing to the point where it can make its own recommendations on meta titles and descriptions and featured snippets in terms of what you feature on as a business, as a product. And, that's why you got to make sure you've got the basics covered, like your H1 and H2 tags. Make sure that your page is structured in terms of content and you have the right URLs in place and you have a sitemap for that URL and it's submitted and it's indexed and it's crawled by Google. There's a lot of things you need to consider. So do the basics with SEO right. If you do the basics with SEO right, despite all the algorithm updates that happen and the AI learning that's coming into it, you will have a strong foundation to build on. And then it's investigating what is potentially causing any drop off in performance and what's happening. So change has come to Google and very, very quickly. And it's coming into not just how you provide content, how you provide answers. You need to really start looking at your content strategy internally on your content pages. And, I always say there's 3 pillars to SEO: technical, content, and outreach, which is basically link building. And it's quality of links over quantity of links. That's old hat SEO. We focus on white hat SEO, which is outreach, PR, supporting your keyword research, and then link building around those particular keywords and getting the right content out there on high domain authority websites that give you good links back and gives your overall domain authority score an uplift within platforms. So to monitor stuff like that, you need to be using platforms like SEMrush. SEMrush is a great platform. There's a free model of it, but it's very basic and you can't get much out of it. But as an individual user, you're spending, you might spend maybe, between $500 to $1,000 on it a year, which I think for value of what it brings in and the insights you get is worthwhile. So we obviously have an agency account, so we spend probably thousands a month on a platform like SEMrush. But it's a great tool. It is the industry standard. Well, I wouldn't say industry standard, but it is the industry go-to tool for SEO, SEMrush. So do use that. And again, content should be your focus now. Core Web Vitals, which falls in the technical, making sure you get that done. Then it's your on-page content structure and looking at that. But if there's anything I want you guys to kind of work with in terms of what your focus on SEO should be, is these are the 5 things I want you to focus on. Check your Core Web Vitals and invest in improvements with a web developer. Target long tail question keywords. So start doing good keyword research. But when I mean long tail, I mean like, how to improve my website SEO. That's a long tail keyword search term. A short term keyword would be something like, SEO services or SEO agency leads. That's like short term, which is more competitive. You will see ads for, but long tail, you won't see ads for. You will see the right content appear. Write high quality, long form content. So don't just write a 500 word blog. Spend some time. Don't do blogs every day. We do 2 blogs a month on our website to just give you an indication. But we make sure that at least 1,000 words to make sure that the content is their quality and provide the insight. Sometimes when I think of a topic, we might do something bespoke, like we did one around, AI and automation within the workplace. And then we did a follow-up on that in terms of digital marketing because it was a hot topic. And we want to talk about, I think combined, there are about between 4,000, 6,000 keywords together. So it's not just short-term content for the sake of creating blogs. Focus on quality over quantity. Keep up with the basics of SEO. I can't stress that further. Doing the basics of SEO is so, so important. And keyword research should be at the forefront focus, especially if you're a niche. When I mean you're a niche, I mean like there's not a lot of search terms. There's not a lot of search keywords that you can optimize towards. So you need to be doing a lot of keyword research supporting what you do as a business. I give an example of a company that we have, which focuses on financing you for, if you need to pay inheritance tax. Now, that is not your standard finance bank company. That is someone searching for finance to get inheritance tax early. Well, to get the inheritance early, they can get a loan out on the inheritance value, which means when the inheritance comes through, the company gets it, or they can get a loan out to pay the inheritance tax, which means they pay the loan back slowly, but they don't have to lose like 40, 50 grand inheritance tax. But that gives you an example of it. But that's a very niche kind of financial service product. Not many people in the market doing that. So again, keyword research is the focus and should be the focus for that company in terms of what they're optimizing on, as well as obviously boosting the brand. So they're the 5 key things. I'd say focus on SEO. So a bit of a simple, very informative, very educational focused podcast episode. I hope you found that really useful in terms of the future of SEO. We're going to be doing another kind of trend focused podcast next, where I'll be answering a lot of questions that have come through to me. And then in the following series, we've got some guests coming on board so we can have more one-to-one discuss other topics and trends. But don't forget to like, follow, subscribe our podcast and vodcast channels, and visit www.bobblepod.co.uk. Or if you're interested, find me on LinkedIn, Manpreet Singh, drop me a message, ask me questions. And if you want to feature on the podcast or you feel like you want to add value to it, you think there's a topic we need to discuss, get in touch. Tell us what we can be doing and how we can be improving it. It's here to provide value for you. So thank you everyone for listening.